and welcome to Life Beats Radio. I'm your host, Dawn Mack, and so glad to be here with you on this Tuesday evening. And I must tell you, right out of the gate, I wondered if I was going to get here this evening. I was driving in from my day job, as I like to call it, and my car just started stalling. It was like alternator. I mean, I knew immediately it was the alternator, and by the grace of God, I made it to my house because I have to take it to my dealership tomorrow morning as it's under warranty. But I just, you know, I'm one to just kind of get on edge when things all of a sudden hit me out of the clear blue, and I had to kind of take a step back and go, you know, what is God trying to teach me? Maybe to slow down, possibly? Well, in any event, that is my story of getting home this evening, and so it's just, you know, when I think of all the other places my car could have stalled, I'm glad I wasn't on the major interstate. I was on a country back road, which, you know, was good. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because that's kind of been weighing on me ever since I got in and just was able to take a breather. And so I hope that your day has been good. Mine has actually been good, though, I must say. Even in the midst of that, it could have been a lot worse, and I could not have made it home, and I could have been stranded. So I always try to find the positives. It's difficult sometimes, but there are worse things that could have happened, so I just praise God that things were as minimal as they were. So I hope you had no car issues today, and I hope that your day was lovely and all was well, and I hope where you are you saw some sunshine. We did, so that helped. But anyway, I'm so excited to be here with you and very glad that you're here as well. Our guest tonight, I'm very excited to have her with us because she is an author that has written a couple of books now, and she's got a brand new book out called Catch a Falling Star. And to give you a little background on her, she, you know, it's interesting, as we'll talk about. The book is all about, you know, taking chances and plans changing. And in her own life, you know, she never intended to be a fiction author. And it just turned out that she has become a fiction author, and obviously God had bigger and better plans for her. And it's just an example. I think we all can attest to the fact that sometimes our best laid plans, if God has a different idea, then they're going to be diverted and his plans are going to be put in place. So without further ado, I would love to introduce to you tonight Beth Vogt. Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm good. And please, if you will, I did not ask you beforehand how you pronounce your last name, and I apologize if I did not say it correctly.
It's okay. My last name is pronounced Vogt, like voting in an election, but I answer to any way people pronounce it, so you were fine.
Well, please forgive my southern dialect and trying to determine, okay, how do you pronounce this? But Vogt it is, so we will go with that.
Well,
thank you so much. Hey, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's quite an honor to have you with us. And your book, I want to congratulate you on the release of Catch a Falling Star. Wow, what an accomplishment.
Yes, it's been exciting. Catch a Falling Star is my second novel. Wish You Were Here came out last year, and I'm working on my third novel. And like you said, it's a little bit of a surprise for me because I said that I never intended on writing fiction. So to actually be working on my third novel, I still sit at my computer sometimes and I chuckle at myself, and I'm sure God is laughing right along with me.
Well, and usually that's the way it is. I mean, we tend to always have like I said, the best laid plans in mind. I mean, we have our own ideas for how we want our life to be and how we want the course to, you know, what course it needs to take. And God, he just diverts us and puts us on completely different, unexpected paths, I believe, to let us know, hey, I'm in charge, I'm in control, and you're the vessel, I'm the driver. So, you know, it kind of puts us in our place, and boy, am I ever glad that God steers my life, and I'm not in control because what a train wreck it would be. So, well, it is interesting, you know, how that happens, though.
It is. One of my favorite sayings is God's best is often behind the doors marked never. And I have a lot of doors in my life that I marked never. One of them was I was never going to write fiction. When I was in my early 20s, I said I would never marry anyone in the military. I would never marry a doctor. I married a man who was in the Air Force and was going to medical school. When I was in my early 20s, I know. I also said I would never have children. We have 4, and just for God to chuckle, he also, when we had 3 teenagers, he let us enjoy a surprise pregnancy. And so just threw that 4th one in there just for a little bit of fun, and she was born on Christmas Eve. So a lot of the doors that I marked never were exactly the ones that God walked me through. And even becoming a novelist, I always wanted to be a writer, but I had a journalism degree. I loved writing for newspapers and for magazines. I was an editor for a magazine, Mothers of Preschoolers International, MOPS International. I was the editor for their leadership magazine. And so I was achieving a lot of my goals, and then I hit a season of burnout. And I actually said I was done with writing. And what happened was God turned that season of burnout into a bend in the road. And yes, he wanted me to continue writing, but he opened the door and directed me to writing novels. And I couldn't have been more surprised, but it was very clear that that's where God was leading.
That is just an amazing story, because as you're sharing that, I'm sitting there thinking about in my own mind, and I'm sure every one of us has had those never moments. I mean, I myself, I can identify with them. I'm never going to have children. I mean, that was kind of something that I had no problem with getting married, but I didn't want to have children at that, in my young years. I was just like, this is just not part of who I am. I don't think I can be a good mother. There were so many reasons and excuses I gave myself. And God had a completely different idea. I have 3. I have almost a 23-year-old, a 18-year-old who's just graduated from high school, and then my youngest daughter who's 15, and and a grandson now. And so it's just like, and when I think about, and I'm sure you could probably attest to this as well, when I think about my life without my 3 children and now my grandson, had I not had my oldest daughter, I wouldn't have a grandson. So, wow, what blessings they've been. And I'm so thankful God saw fit to give me 3 children, even against my wishes. And it worked out. I mean, it wasn't that they were surprises. He changed my heart on that. And so then all of a sudden, I was blessed. It's just amazing how that works.
It is, and I think the idea of marking doors and saying, I'm never going to do this, or I'm never going to do that, ties into even the topic of my book, Catch a Falling Star, life not going according to plans. We make plans that we're going to do certain things or we're not going to do certain things. And what do we do when things that we want to happen don't happen, or the things that we dream about do come true, and then we find out, oh, that's not exactly what we thought it was going to be. And I think that's sometimes what we struggle with, is we make plans, and the plans that we thought were going to be wonderful, oh, wow, there's reality inside that too. And I think what we have to learn is God is in the plans that don't come true, and he's in the plans that do come true and maybe turn out not to be exactly what we thought they were going to be.
And, and one of the main things that comes to my mind when I think about how wonderful God's grace is and how well he works to give us his best always is, in the area of relationships. I've heard time and again, many friends of mine have said, oh, I'm so glad that I was blessed with this person. I mean, if I hadn't met this person, I might still be stuck with that person. Or, it's obvious God put who he wanted in my life. I'm so thankful he did, kind of thing. And that there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, I think when we get out of our own way sometimes and we allow God to just do what he intends to do, life is so much bigger and better than we could ever dream up or envision or come up with on our own,
I absolutely agree with that, Donna. I also think I've heard people talk about, finding the right person. my husband and I have been married for 33 years now. That absolutely flabbergasts me to say that. But what I've learned is that it's not so much finding the right person, it's growing up enough to be the right person. And letting God get in my heart and change me so that I can be the wife, not just that my husband wants or needs, but to be the wife that I want to be, or to be the mom that I want to be, or to be the friend that I want to be, because I came into the world with preconceived ideas. I came into marriage, or I come into friendships with preconceived ideas about what it's supposed to look like. And then I have to step back and let God change me and work in me so that I can, in all my relationships, reflect Him to the people that I love, to the people that I interact with. And so sometimes it's becoming who you need to be in the relationships that we have in our lives.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Now, I want to ask you, in your book, what is a message? Is there a message that you hope readers walk away with after finishing Catch a Falling Star?
Oh, Catch a Falling Star, it's so much fun to write novels because you get to tuck in different messages. I always want my readers to have a good story and to watch my imaginary characters fall in love, and I always try to weave in humor and things like that. But as a believer who's writing a novel, I also get to tuck in spiritual truths. There are even times when I pray about my imaginary characters, and I think, God, if these people were real, what would you be saying to these people? And so one of the things, like I said a little earlier, is I want people to realize that God is in the plans that come true, and He's also in the plans and the dreams that don't come true. Both of those are within His will for us, and we have to be willing to open our eyes and look for that. How is God working in my life when He says yes? How is He working in my life when He says wait? How is He working in my life when He says no? And all of those times, He still loves me. And so I think that's one of the main messages of Catch a Falling Star, because everybody grapples with life not going according to their plans, with dreams not coming true.
Yeah, and that's I think that is so important to say, because every one of us has had dreams, and we've been disappointed when dreams didn't come true. And then some dreams have come true that happen differently than like you were saying earlier, these preconceived notions that we have about how it's supposed to be when we grow up, or when we go to work, or when we get married or have kids. I mean, whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of that is the same when it comes to the dreams we have. And sometimes when things happen, it may be the dream, it's just not the way we envisioned it. And it could be better than we envisioned, or it could be different than what we envisioned. But nonetheless, when it comes to fruition, I just am a firm believer that if it's meant to be God's will, it's going to be God's will. And no matter, it may take 40 years in the wilderness to come to grips and get on God's plan for some of us, but we can make it as easy or as difficult as possible. So, that's a very important point to make.
Yes, absolutely. So that was the main spiritual truth that I was trying to weave in there. I have a subplot story in Catch a Falling Star that deals with adoption, and I can't think of anyone who hasn't been touched by adoption somehow. Either they've adopted, or maybe they were the child that was adopted, or they have friends. And that was the case for me. I have a very close friend, one of my best friends, who has adopted, and I've watched her walk out that ministry. I believe adoption is a ministry, and watching her walk that out just opened my eyes, because there were challenges for her as a mom, and yet her choice to love those children no matter what, and believing that this was what God had called her to. And sometimes you go into motherhood, whether it's adoption or just naturally, you go into motherhood thinking this is going to be easy. And then you realize love has to be a choice, and you have to love that child when it's hard and when that child doesn't love you back. And that's why I wove that story into Catch a Falling Star, because sometimes relationships don't go as smoothly as we want them to go. And then what is your choice? Do you quit, or do you choose to love that person, whether it's a friend or a family member? Do you choose to love them even when it's hard?
Yeah, and it really is a choice. It really is about choices. And, and your book really does look at, relationships from a standpoint of that's well beyond that of just a traditional love story, by virtue of the adoption subline and the fact that there's singleness and the loss of parents. And how does all of that connect the characters together in the story?
Well, I do write contemporary romances. I do write contemporary romances that take place in Colorado. That's where I live, and it's a beautiful state. But romance doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens within context of life. And so I try to write real-life romances. And so the hero and the heroine, yes, they're falling in love, and they have to overcome obstacles, but they have a life. And so those other relationships affect who they are and help them make choices and help them grow. So my heroine is watching her friend and her employee deal with this issue of adoption and watching her make choices about how she's dealing with life not going according to plan. And my hero is dealing with the fact that he's the guardian of a much younger sibling, and that's not anything he signed on for, and it's affecting him and changing him. And that's true in real life, too, that we don't live life in a vacuum. God uses the circumstances in our life to mold us, to scrape the gunk off of us so that we look less like ourselves and more like him. Because ultimately, we're called to reflect him to the world. And that means we have to look less like us and more like him.
And that is so beautifully said, because, if you think about it, if everything was just rosy and wonderful in our lives every single day, we would be hard-pressed to ever turn to God. I mean, and I think the things that happen in our lives and the circumstances that crop up unexpectedly or expectedly, whatever the case may be, are those things that God allows to help, strip away all those layers and to mold and shape us to be more like him, which is, his primary goal for each and every one of us. And if we didn't have those experiences to help us along in our journey, to teach us about ourselves, to teach us about God's grace, then, our purpose for being here would kind of be for naught in a way. And more importantly, it would serve a little purpose if Christ had not died on that cross for all of us. So it definitely puts a lot of things in perspective, when people ask why this had to happen, when you hear of things in the news or just everyday occurrences. God's reason for everything is a legitimate reason. We just may not have the answers that we're seeking at that moment.
Absolutely. I think God allows us to ask why. It's the attitude of how we ask why. On my website, BethVogt.com, I'm actually blogging a 3-part series titled Turning Back, from Turning My Back on God. And it was a time when a 5-year period where I really struggled with a number of tough circumstances, but rather than choosing to trust God during that time, I chose to doubt him. I hate having to say that, but that's just the unvarnished, ugly truth. I never stopped believing in him. I just stopped trusting him. And but I came out on the other side learning that, number one, I never want to do that again. God is who he says he is, no matter what the circumstances of our life. He is trustworthy. He is faithful. He never abandoned me, no matter how bad my attitude was toward him. He was faithful. And I learned that I do have a choice how I walk through trials. I can stay close to him. I can keep my focus on him and who he is and who he promises to be, or I can just totally focus on the circumstances, which is going to lead to doubt. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing the blog series, is because it is an attitude. It is a choice. It's where is my focus going to be? On me, which is going to lead to weakness, or on God? And that's going to bring me strength and hope in times of struggle.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been through, some pretty difficult things in my life, and especially in recent years, and in those moments, when we face challenges and difficulties, we have that choice of, are we going to be better, or are we going to be bitter? Are we going to put our faith and trust in God to get us through it? Are we going to try to muddle through on our own? Things never work out very well when we try to muddle through on our own. But I think that sometimes the enemy, that he preys on the fact that, if something crops up that really does challenge us, that seed of doubt gets planted in our minds, and that's where we have to kind of retrain our brains and reapply our focus on God and never take our focus off of him, because when we do, that's when that doubt creeps in, and it makes it very difficult, even more so than what we're already going through in the moment. So it's something we always need to have at the forefront of our mind, no matter what.
Yes, it's where is your anchor? Where are your anchor points? What truths are you going to believe that are going to combat the lies? And that's one of the things that, as a believer, as a novelist, those are things that I get to weave into my novels, and that's actually one of my favorite things, is to weave in the spiritual truth. I'm a part of My Book Therapy, which is a writing and coaching community started by Susan May Warren. She's a best-selling, award-winning author. She started the community. Rachel Hauk is also another part of the writing community. And one of their sayings is, the hero of the book heals the wound, and God heals the lie. And that's true in our novels, but it's also true in real life, that God is the one with the truth that we need to know when we start believing a lie. And that's what I like to insert into my novels, too, is the truth that, yes, my imaginary characters need to hear, but the truth that we need to hear day to day, in and out, when we're confronting challenges.
Because, if you think about it, life is hard, and every day there's some challenge of some sort that we're up against. Just because, we're in a fallen world and we're up against, whether it be challenges with people, challenges with situations, just challenges of life in general. And it's not intended to be perfect, for the here and now. And so it is something that it's just so important to keep our focus on God and where he is with regard to who we are, because, like you say, he never changes, and he never lets us down, and he never turns his back on us, even when there are moments when we turn ours on him,
That's right. There's always challenges. It can be something like car trouble on the way home from work.
I know. I was like, wow, Now, the main character, Kendall, one of the things that's very interesting is she actually finds herself on her 36th birthday without a husband and the family that she's dreamed of and longed for. And, in relating that to society, I mean, how much do you think society sometimes adds undue pressure on, our expectations? Because, if you, all you have to do is look at social media or turn on the television, and it's, there's always this kind of societal view of how things should be. And I think in some, when I look at celebrities and I look at young girls who are looking up to these celebrities who are trying to be rail thin or are rail thin, and they think that, they've got to be that thin or that, have that look in order to be accepted. And How much of that do you think interferes with our faith in God's timing?
You know, we talk about peer pressure to children. You know, watch out for peer pressure in elementary school, middle school, high school. And what I've realized is peer pressure never stops. There's parental peer pressure, you know, amongst parents. Am I doing it as well as that other parent is doing? There's adult peer pressure. You know, that's the whole keeping up with the Joneses thing. There's never a season in life when we're not dealing with peer pressure of some sort. Am I doing what I should be doing? The question is, who are we listening to? Who's the authority in our life about how life is supposed to be lived? And then even within the church, there can be, quote-unquote, peer pressure. And I think one of the things I was trying to address with the issue of Kendall is what happens for a woman, you know, when you're growing up within church, you have youth group, and then you have college and career. But by the time you're in your late 20s or early 30s at the latest, there's no group for you if you're not married. You should be in the young marrieds group. And the reality is that's not always the case for women. Some women are still single, and yet they don't feel like they belong in the church because there can be this unspoken expectation, well, you should be married by now. And if you're not, what have you done wrong? And so I do think there are hidden pressures, unspoken pressures. I've talked to some women who've had to confront that pressure where friends have come and spoken to them and said, what are you doing wrong? You should be married by now. Almost implying you should have said yes to somebody, you know, even if it wasn't necessarily Mr. Right. Say yes to Mr. Almost Right, you know. Yeah. And so I do think that there are both overt pressures and some that are just spoken right out loud. And I think that we do put pressure on both men and women rather than letting them know that they are loved for who they are and that singleness is not a curse at all, and that they are waiting on God for the right time.
Yeah, and, you know, when you think about the divorce rate in our country today, you know, you have to wonder, and I've thought this many times, you know, how many of those people that got divorced, you know, truly waited on God, whether it be for the right mate, for God to send the right person to them, or, like you were saying earlier, did they make that choice to give up rather than fighting through and pushing through the difficulties when they came and arose? Because, you know, as you know, there's no perfect relationship, and, you know, there's going to be conflicts from time to time or disagreement, and you have to make that choice in that moment. Are you going to push through it, or are you going to give up and walk away? And I think nowadays, that's going back to society, you know, just like they whisper, you know, why are you not married yet? They also send that message, say, you know, hey, if it's just not working out, don't waste your time trying to work through it. Just move forward and find someone else. And, you know, society's message just made it just too convenient. And people are throwing away marriage and the vow and sanctity of marriage on a whim because they think it's the right thing to do in the moment. And so, you know, there's a lot to be said for that. There's, you know, God's timing is not ours. And we, you know, he has his reasons why he wants us to wait. And I think sometimes it's just a matter of he wants us to be mature enough. He wants us to be ready for it. And he puts us through these seasons so that we can learn to be the people he wants us to be, so that when he sends us that great thing in our lives, we're ready for it.
And even saying that, even saying God's in this, even saying, you know, God may be asking you to wait, that is not to deny that it's not hard to wait, that it's not lonely at times, that it doesn't mean that you want something different. I think we need to allow people to express everything that they're feeling during a difficult season, whether it's I would like to be married but I'm not, or I'm in a difficult marriage, or I'm going through fill in the blank, whatever difficulty you're dealing with. I think within the church, we have to give each other freedom to express the pain of whatever difficulty we're dealing with and allow them to express that and realize that's not saying we're not trusting God at that time.
Yes, that is so true. I have one more question for you, and that is, being that this is your second novel, I'm sure, this experience has been so different from the first time you wrote a novel. And what have you learned, and what are some things that you've done differently this time around?
Oh, wow. There's so many things that I've learned. I've been challenged by my mentors to up my game with every book, and so it's constantly looking at each book and going, okay, what skill do I want to try to improve on with each book? So there's never a chance where you kind of go, okay, I've got it, I've made it as a writer. Constantly, I was talking to my mentor, Rachel, today, and talking about, okay, what are we working on with this next book? Its title is Somebody Like You. What are we working on with this book that we're going to improve? So that's one of the things I've learned. You don't ever arrive as a writer. I think between the debut novel, Wish You Were Here, and the second novel, Catch a Falling Star, what I learned is I had to learn how to keep myself mentally straight. Becoming a novelist, having a book published, we think it's about sales and awards and, please, readers, like my books and say nice things about me on Amazon. That's what we think it's about.
Mm-hmm.
In God's economy, that's not what it's about. And that's what I had to learn, was in his economy, he is all about conforming me to his image. He has given me the gifts and talents of being a writer. And so one of the main avenues that he conforms me to his image is through this experience of being a novelist. And he uses this avenue, writing novels. This is the way that I get to share him, reflect him to the world. And that means this is another way that he scrapes me off. So if my ego rears up, he goes, you know what, that doesn't look anything like me. That attitude, that pride, that looks an awful lot like you. And that's got to go. And so I think that's the biggest thing I learned between the first novel and the second novel is that God uses this to conform me to his image. And that was humbling, but that was also very freeing for me.
Well, and talking about taking the pressure off, I mean, when we're doing things for God's glory, such as you're writing and I'm using this radio ministry to do a bunch of different things in a lot of areas. And, I think a lot of times if we're just thinking about doing what we can to please God and to praise God in the midst of the moment, with the gifts he's equipped us to do, we don't need to worry about the rewards or the money or anything along those lines that are worldly, because if we're doing it for the right reasons and in the right way with the right attitude, God's going to take care of us in all areas according to how he wants to bless us. And it really does take the pressure off when you're realizing that you're not in it alone and you're not having to be, because God's right here with you, guiding you and directing your steps every step of the way.
Yes, and I loved the phrase that you used, Dawn, according to how he wants to bless us. And that's where you leave it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think people tend to forget that, but at the end of the day, it really is his will. It is what he wants for our life. And people have a hard time giving into that. I've struggled with that many times throughout my life. I've gotten better at it. I'm not perfect, but I've definitely gotten better with the whole, okay, God, hands off. It's yours. Here, do with it what you will. Do with me what you will. But people have a really difficult time. I've struggled with it, too, of just letting go and letting God in everything, not just in the things they pick and choose and say, okay, God, I'm going to handle this, you handle this. It's in everything, every aspect of our lives. And, I think once we're able to grasp that concept, it really does take the pressure off of a lot of things, because we realize that God is way bigger than we are, and he has the ability to do whatever he wants with us if we'll allow him to do so. So it's just a beautiful thing, a beautiful relationship that we have with him, our Creator.
Yes. I love all those truths. I was reading in A Confident Heart this morning by Renee Swope, and the thought was how important it is to embrace the reason you are who you are. And it referred back to Ephesians, about how God created us as his masterpiece for the good works that he planned for us. And I think that falls in line with what you're talking about, to embrace who we are in light of how God has created us for the works that he's planned for us.
Yes, most definitely. Well, Beth, I could talk to you for hours on end about your book and your work and just your great journey that you have been on from the moment you uttered that first never to now. It's just amazing, your story. And it is so true what they say, and that is never say never, because most of the time, and we say that word, or we utter that, we profess the nevers in our lives. You can rest assured God has a great sense of humor, and he is going to say, you should have never said never. He's the only one that can say never and it stands, But we, on the other hand, it's just kind of a running joke with him when we say it. So he's always going to prove us differently. So, but in any event, I can't thank you enough for being our guest this evening and sharing with us about your new book, Catch a Falling Star. And I cannot wait for the next book to come out, and would love to have you back to talk about that when it is out and being promoted.
Thank you. I'll look forward to that. I had a great time talking with you tonight, Dawn.
Same here, and I'd love to have you back anytime, Beth. So God bless you and your ministry and your family.
God bless you, too. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We've been speaking with Beth Vogt, and she is just a lovely, lovely person. So enjoyed speaking with her. The book is Catch a Falling Star, and I must tell you, you have to go pick it up. It is an excellent book, has a great story, and she hit on, some things about it, although I won't give anything away here. Too much, you just have to read it. I'm a sucker for a great love story, but I'm a real sucker for a great Christian love story. I really got, excited about Christian fiction some years ago, and started reading it, and each and every time I come away with this huge, not only great story that I've just read, no matter what the story is, but also the message in the story that is all about God. And I love how God uses authors like that to share his word and to, profess his message that we all need to hear. And sometimes the best way to hear it is in the most unexpected ways, as in Catch a Falling Star. So please pick up the book. It's a great book, and I think you'll absolutely love it. And again, we want to thank Beth for being our special guest this evening. And thank you to all of you for being here with us. We greatly appreciate your time so very much. If you're brand new to our program, welcome aboard. We're always glad to have new listeners joining us, and we hope that you will be back again with us. And tomorrow night we will be right back here at 7 p.m. Eastern, so we hope that you will join us for that. But until then, take care, have a great night, and God bless